Okay, go ahead.
All right, I call to order the committee of the whole meeting at 6:30 p.m. in the boardroom of Oak Park and River Forest High School. Please call the roll.
Mr. Brisbane. Dr. Odell.
Here.
Mr. Arkin.
Here.
Mr. Gertz.
Here.
Dr. Livingston. Mr. Brownhorse.
Here.
Ms. Williams Lee.
Here. I move to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district and independent contractors and specific volunteers, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee of a public body that is subject to the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with this act. Collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, and litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of a particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when a public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. May I have a second?
Second, sir.
Please call the roll.
Dr. Odell.
Yes.
Mr. Arkin.
Yep.
Mr. Gertz.
Yes.
Mr. Brownhorse.
Yes.
Ms. Williams Lee.
Yes.
So. Okay, that's. Okay. Right, we'll go.
Chief. I've never done it because he has to okay.
All right, I agree. Never mind.
Okay.
That's
Good evening, everyone. We are going to reconvene open session at 7:33 p.m. And Ms. Evans, do we have any public comments?
We do not. Oh, wait a minute. But I didn't see anybody sign up out there. You want me to check?
Yeah.
Anybody? We good? All right, we don't have it.
Thank you for that. With that, I move to approve the minutes of the June 11, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting as presented. Are there any corrections or adjustments that need to be made? Seeing none, may I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. And I'm going to shuffle our agenda around just a bit, given that we have guests who are joining us tonight. I want to switch to policy aid and data sharing, agreement for early childhood collaboration. So we'll start with that first.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for coming. The board will recall the conversation we had several board meetings back regarding our IGA with the early child collaboration. That is slated to come to the board in 2 weeks for approval. We have that nailed down and we're ready to roll with that. As party to that, now have students who are going in juniors, the rising juniors, who were the first crew to cohort, I should say, to move through the early child collaborations efforts. In our school, we want to stand up a data sharing allows us to track that progress longitudinally. So what you have here with this NORC data use agreement is something that is very parallel to what is in place in District 97, so that we have a consistent approach across our community for how we are measuring the progress of this children's initiative. And so if you have questions, right, we have folks over here regarding this, but this is here for your review, and we will then bring it to the board for approval 2 weeks from tonight.
John, anything that you want to add?
I just think it's tremendously exciting.
It is.
It's a monumental achievement if we get this rolling, and I'm just thrilled about it.
Okay, I will just add a little color commentary here that the very first meeting I had with Mary, tracking this data longitudinally was the bulk of the conversation. So it's I share your excitement for the fact that we're finally in this.
Any questions or you think about this? Yeah, and I'll just add, I mean, I agree, I think it's great, and also I've worked with North in other capacities, and they do great work, so I think it's a really exciting partnership, and glad that we're here. Yeah.
Thank you.
And this after Johnson share, it'll come back to the board in 2 weeks for approval. Were there also, we had the amended IGA for early childhood, and wanted to see if there are any questions from the board for anyone about that.
We just get a quick review of what changed between when we saw this before and now, what the key changes are.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Reynolds with the Collaboration for Early Childhood. Since last you saw this, there are actually not any significant changes to it. So I'm glad I came to the microphone to share that update. From the original agreement that was signed first in 2013 and then amended again in 2016, the changes are exactly what we talked about the last time I was here. So adjusting some of the governance structures to make it flow a little bit more smoothly for everyone, adjusting the payment structure to make that a little bit more durable.
And the board will have this, in 2 weeks to ask further questions if they choose.
Okay, so the extra time that we took was around the data sharing agreement and nailing down the details of the data sharing agreement?
Yes, in part it was also making sure that the IGA was very much in sync across the various agencies, so.
Yeah, as you can imagine,
It's just.
computations of 97's legal, 200's legal, the village is legal. So just routing it circularly several times.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for moving us up on the agenda.
Absolutely. Pretty cool. I want to see if there are any other questions for Jerry. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, see you soon. Thank you.
And we're now going to move on to the final items, but also adjust both. We're gonna start with project two, item G, project two monthly construction report. Yeah.
Okay, as everybody gets situated, just want to take 2 seconds. It seemed like an appropriate time as we talk construction and project two to introduce the board to our new director of buildings and grounds. So Perrin Schmidt is in the background right here. He is getting caught up on all speed or getting caught up to speed on all things project two. And now we'll turn it over to Gil Bain to share our update, and then we've got recent pictures too of kind of the transformation of the inside of the building.
You want to do the dashboard or the pictures first?
Let's go with the pictures.
While you pull that up, I just want to say welcome. Happy to have you here.
We'll start talking about pictures.
Well, since last time I met with you guys, had quite a bit have happened, so we are projecting 90% complete with the project. To date, we've built or put in work in place about 82 million. Right now, we have roughly 24 items out there under review for cost items that we're currently chasing down, whether those are credits or adds to the job. Improving scope or reducing scope as well. We've had 0 recordable accidents since last time I met you guys, and we've worked a little over 13,000 additional man hours since April's last time. So, big milestones for us. We are enclosed in the building. All of our glass is installed. Finally, the corner picture there, that corner glass is finally in. All of our face bricks done. Our expansion joints are in. Our green roof is on. We have small little details to hammer out on the building. Exterior cameras, fire department connections, stuff like that. But we are enclosed, which is great. We have started some of our mechanical equipment startup. So if you want to flip through the page, I think we have some of those pictures. But we have started mechanical equipment startup. So our geothermal systems on the P2 side have started. Our flush outs have begun, and we are working through our fire alarm programming, as well as our lighting control programming, and moving into our domestic water flush and fill. Some of the pictures you see here, I think you guys seen it before, but our locker rooms have finally made some pretty good progress. I would say 75% of our lockers are installed throughout the building. We have minor tweaking to do on some of these bases. You can see in here, not all the lockers are set. So we're still taking in one more delivery of semi next week. That is the remaining bit of our lockers. That's all focused in the basement. Our basement floors are being grinded down, scuffed up right now, I'll say, for sealed concrete. And our final painting is occurring as well. So all of our epoxy flooring throughout bathrooms are done. And most of our hardwood ceilings are all painted. And we're dropping back and putting in all of our ceiling tile where we can. If you want to go into the next picture. Here's one of the dressing rooms down in the basement. So you guys want to see us do a walkthrough. This room has all the mirrors now, and millwork is set. So we are at a stage where we need to turn on our air conditioning. So we put in the final flooring, which is carpet, drop the rest of our ACT tiles, and then finish paint. And put some doors up, clean, walk away. So we're getting very close. We have 250 doors throughout the project, and I'd say over 150 of them are all wood. So we need some air conditioning before we put that stuff in, so it doesn't swell up and twist on us. So that's why those doors need to go off. You want to go into the next page? Here's what our bathrooms look like throughout the building. So we have all of our ceramic tiles done. All of our fixtures are in, flooring's done, ceilings are in. We're now working on putting in our toilet partitions and putting up the remaining accessories like soap dispensers, toilet paper dispensers, so really good progress there throughout our bathrooms. Okay, the next slide is our corridors. So here's what the majority of our corridors are looking like, except for the first floor. Our flow right now in the building is working top down, so trying to work our way out the front door. So our third floor picture here is what you see on the left side of that picture is to our gym. On the right side is to the concessions and PE office, actually. So all of our polished concrete on levels 3 and 2 are done. 50% of our polished concrete was done on 1 as of today. We're getting ready to roll into the rest of that 50% here end of this week, going through the weekend. We have all our plywood in, so that's where finished casework goes in, display cases for trophies, etc. That goes in starting next week. And again, our ceilings are not finished, lights are in, we've started trimming out clocks, etc. throughout the ceiling, so really good progress through here. The walls that you see, that bluish gray entering into the gym, that gets the same ceramic wall tile that you have now at the cafeteria entrance and the library entrance. That tile has started getting set this week. You want to go ahead and go to the next. This is what our gym looks like. All of our subfloor to the gym is installed. We're at a point where we need to turn the corner and start getting in the actual maple of the floor, the finished flooring. We're working through some humidity issues. Last week did not help, so we're fighting that right now, pulling the humidity out of it. But in the meantime, we have progressed our window shades install around the exterior windows, and we mobilized our mural artists on the north wall. You guys remember the render as that overlap 3 Husky head on that north wall of the gym. That work is getting laid out right now, getting started up. Next pictures. Here's what the feature wall looks like. Communication stair. Big time. You guys might remember this is alternate 1 that was added into the project. It wasn't really part of it. So that wall, all of the ceramic tile around that wall is done. The wall is temped and ready to go for the final finish of the mosaic design. So all we need to put in now is our TVs. The monument stair, you can see the stringers are in. Since then, that complete monument stair is now set. The only thing that is not done on that stairwell is the actual terrazzo treads, which are sitting right in front of them, and the handrails, which are sitting outside ready to go. We're getting ready to schedule that work in a couple of days. Get that done. We have been holding off because the first floor and the second floor up here, this is where we're wrapping up our polished concrete. You'll see additional casework getting ready, so we start putting that final work in that space. Next picture, please. Kind of blown out. A lot of you guys definitely have not walked this space, but this is the old West Pool. It's no longer there. Sorry for the distortion on this one, but this pool has now been completely filled in, geofoam and concrete. It's all the mechanical systems are taken out. We built masonry walls in there, and we refinished the ceiling. As you can see, that metal cage you see laying on the ground, that is the batting cage that is now suspended above. We've finished all the wall pad in that room as of today, and wrapping up a little miscellaneous flooring in that space at the entrance into that. Here's a picture of your green roof. So there's a nice section of the green roof. This is the lower mechanical well. Since this picture, all the rain we've had, that stuff has grown substantially. So it is surviving. When we put it in, it's an all year round plant. It's meant to take the abuse, so it can take a drought. It was a little brown when we put it in, and it's nice to see it snap back. So your entire roof is covered in all this green. Go ahead, next picture. Here's your pool, and I wish I had an updated photo for you because it's night and day what we've done. That thing is sitting right now full of water. We are in the process of doing the fill test procedure as part of the specs requirements pool. We fill the pool with water, we pressure test it, make sure it holds water for a certain duration. Once we've deemed that it has succeeded that test, we start draining it, move into the actual finishes inside the vessel of the pool. plaster, the tile, the final paint, etc. Around the pool, all that handrail glass is done up on the balcony. All of our acoustical baffles are in, the ductwork, the major pieces of ductwork are in now, our window shades are in. We're in the process of trying to clear out that space, we can get going on the epoxy flooring that surrounds that pool. So I wish I had an updated photo for you guys. I think that might be it on the pictures.
Yeah.
From there, what we have left, like I said, privatization activities, flooring like I'm standing on right now, wood doors, millwork, and small miscellaneous like finishes throughout. When I say small, floor partitions, etc. We are turning on AC next week. We had a little coordination with Verigy and the football field this past week to wrap up their flush field, but that's all past us now. And we just had a walk today with the fire marshal about flipping and switching out the fire pump. Part of our design or part of our bid was that project 2 added a whole new fire pump system where it was sized correctly to serve the entire building now with the added space. The old fire pump is now being decommissioned. So we just walked with the fire marshal, we got that game plan all set. Targeting that their quarters of those funds to go after. Bad news. Since we met with you guys, I know last we told you that our substantial completion date was going to be 8/19 for the majority of the building. Unfortunately, because of a few hiccups here, we are now tracking 9/1, so an additional 8 days from the date we told you guys originally. In the same spirit as before, we don't want to rush finishes. We don't want to mess with quality. We want to do it safe. So that is why we are extending out. It's unfortunate we couldn't hit the date. It really actually bothers us quite a bit. But we are pretty confident that we will be able to turn over the building, excluding the gym and the pool, by the 9/1 date. We are still tracking for the pool and gym to be turned over 10/1.
I'm gonna jump in on just why the 8 days, right? Why the team is within the overall building and then also the pool and the gym. So we worked through a few challenges through the summer months. We didn't have conditioning or cooling ready as soon as we needed it. It has pushed off the delay of wood doors, flooring, things like that. We had options to put the flooring down and essentially void the warranties, which we weren't willing to do, knowing that this building has to stand for a long time. It's not worth it in the grand scheme of things. One of the unfortunate things that I think, we, not to reflect back 2 years ago, but when we first started this project, we encountered the Nicor gas delay, right? Many of you guys may remember that. We spent about 2.5 months prior to the demolition trying to get the gas main relocated so that we could demolish the existing building. And from then until now, we've been trying to overcome or close that gap, right? Initially, the building was going to be done tentatively in May. That left us with the summer months for a buffer, so to speak. And we were going to do the West Pool conversion, which Jake just talked to that picture. I still have it today. Since then, we have battled challenges we've talked about in our quarterly updates. We were projecting 8/19. One of the things that we really couldn't predict was the manpower struggles we were going to have this summer and just getting people here. What we've learned is, the team has worked 7 days a week for I don't know how many months now. With the polishing of the concrete has been 7 days a week. We've got 20 some people on the polishing and epoxy crew. It's been long days and long weeks, and we just are not making the progress. Part of what we're facing, and it's not just here in Oak Park, is there's just been a manpower shortage across all schoolwork, I'll say, all jobs. There are some big jobs, obviously everybody hears the data centers, but there's some other big jobs that are pulling our schools manpower in this area. And then just the typical summer rush of summer school construction. And so while we were hopeful that working Saturdays and Sundays would yield a better outcome and bring us back to our date. Unfortunately, where we sit today is we struggle to get manpower all summer. And we kept going in some areas without the conditioning. We weren't really in a position to really push on people like our carpenters or our flooring contractor because we were putting it in at risk anyways if we were proceeding. So, you know, working through the challenges, the water has been flushed on the field side of the geothermal system as of today. We're flushed and filled on our side as well. We have one final test on Monday to make sure the chemical balance is correct on the field side, so that when we join the two systems together, we're not contaminating or risking the equipment on the PG side of geothermal, right? And that's the key to then turning on the cooling. Now that the summer rush of construction is over, we've been coordinating with our contractors. Our carpentry contractor has a lot of doors to do. They have a lot of finished wood products to install. And they've mobilized a new crew as of this week, gearing up, planning, and they have a bunch more guys on the way next week. So we have seen an uptick in ceiling guys. We've seen an uptick in carpenters, and we expect to continue to see more. Our polished concrete crew is actually coming to the end of what's been a very long and dirty process in polishing the floors, although they're turning out really great. I think the second, third floors look great. But it has left us in a tough spot. And as Jay said, we do not love saying September 1st. We don't love saying October 1st. But it is realistic, and we've got we have a fight and a challenge to get to September 1st, but we're committed. We do see the manpower uptick to get there, and you know, we've got to get there. So, what questions can we answer for you guys?
Tim?
Thanks, Jeremy. Jake, I appreciate your candor, appreciate the update. My question is really more for the administration. So pushing back. Just talk us through how you're going to address those delays for curriculum, and separately how you're going to address the extracurricular.
Dr. Hudson, we can stab at this, and if there's anything you want to add, and please feel free. Okay. Regarding curriculum, and you know, so our periods 1 through 8 during the school day, physical education, and other spaces. We're gonna be okay. The buildings that we had last year, for those purposes, is still here, right? With the exception of the West School. It's also physical education classes are often outside, right, in the early part of the school year. That can still happen. But more to the point, we're talking about September 1st. First day for our freshmen is August 24th. So with everything except for the pool and the gym on the 3rd floor being open to our students basically a week after the school year starts, we're talking about a very small amount of time. And our students in the first few days of physical education are not, you know, dressing and fully engaging in physical activities as they, you know, figure out exactly what the classes and their activities are going to be, and they do their own logistics, locker assignments and all that type of stuff this semester. So that we feel we have the resources to, you know, to allow us to transition. Secondly, to extracurriculars, definitely a bit more of a challenge with extracurriculars. We are okay with the majority of our program. Most of our, in fact, right, almost all of our fall sports are exterior, right? Sports, you know, soccer, cross country, football. We're going to be fine with those. And there is still a weight room. Continue to plan to have a weight room in the stadium where it has been the past 2 years. So that's going to be, but again, a week later, the other way. The real challenge is with our girls swimming program in the fall. And Nicole Epson has done an excellent job partnering with others to figure out how this might work. And she's nailing it down. She's Morton School District, who she's very familiar with, has been a really valuable partner for us. And so we're good there. And, our dive program has for a long time been an RV. And so there's that as well. So I anticipate that, we will, those programs will be able to make use of the facilities during this season. So, it's not like it's all or nothing, as far as that is concerned, but, certainly more of an effect with the extra. And the coaches are aware, obviously, families and parents and students are aware, and so we're working to make sure that the season so it's functional for kids, even though it's not exactly what you.
Just curious, does one of the solutions for the delay, looking, to how we can accommodate swimming teams. The park district after Labor Day, they close the pools, if I'm not mistaken, right? Is that a discussion you're having with the park district? I mean, the weather's still nice. It's right across the street.
Yeah, we don't anticipate using pools, the park district pools, at this time. That's not something we anticipate. The solution that we have right now with work, we believe is going to be the way to go.
Thank you guys for your report. I think we knew at the outset when we had the issue with the gas line, it was going to be challenged to get so I for one want to make sure that we're done right, done safely. There's extra 8 days. The second thing we want to make sure it was on time. And the second thing is beyond budget. And maybe you can give us a little idea of where we stand financially.
Much more positive there. Right now, we're still trending at our bid package. We've got $1 million of contingency left and 588,000 of allowance left. So we know some of that will get eaten up over the finalization here as we kind of deploy, an extra crew or some additional hours, but budget's looking really, really good.
Okay, thank you. And then I think I have this question might be for you, Greg. I remember when we did some tours and we had some several months ago. Had some drawings. And there was talk about even a mosaic on one of the walls, and kind of want to know where we stand with that. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen?
Yeah, that's still a conversation we're having. It's not going to happen for this opening.
Right. No, that's obvious.
Yeah, but those are conversations. In fact, I was just talking with folks at York Park Area Arts Council this past weekend when I was at they had a mural grand opening over at the what will be Beyond Hunger on North Avenue. And I was able to talk with several folks there, board members. We are in conversations about what will happen next year and how we can get that set up. We have a teacher liaison that we'll be working with and ideas for different committees. We're just waiting for the school year to start to get that ball rolling. So those conversations are very much progressing as we would expect. Yeah, there's just realistic committees to continue with us, which is great.
One other thing to add on that as well is the direction we went forward with is the wall that's being installed in that mosaic area is the wall that can accommodate then the mosaic being put up. While it's kind of being still planned out and thought through, it will not require say like demoing the entire wall to bring the wall up.
That's good. Thanks, Francis.
Any questions for Josh?
So I think last time we discussed what substantial completion means, especially for our buildings, building strokes. correct me if I'm wrong, it's not like you hand over the building and then the next day, like all the classrooms are ready, facilities are already used, right? So there's gonna be a lag there as well. Can you walk me through kind of how that works and operationally?
Yeah, I can talk to that. So with the September first date, our goal is really to have furniture in those rooms. Have the building cleaned and ready for students, is included. Typically, substantial completion means you pass your life safety inspections, you've generated your punch list, not necessarily completed all those items. And that the life safety, all of the life safety inspections are done and complete. The ROE, the regional office of education has done their inspection, deemed it safe for use or so our goal is September first is to get through all of that so that there are spaces that are available for student use, student and staff use, I should say. And the same with October first, that would include the commissioning, the final testing.
What do you anticipate, right? I mean, there was, right, it sounds like there was concern with labor, and weather primarily, you know, humidity. What could get in the way of us? Sitting on our thing.
So September first. We need a significant amount of manpower. We are putting the plan in place. There's a lot of finishing touches to do. We think it can come together floor by floor. We're working our way through the top down and focused on the third floor. You saw that was the most finished. Because everything has to go out of the building, right? All the construction equipment, materials have to go out, which makes the first floor very difficult. We're trying to finish the weight room right now, and it's about the only nice side, but it's the biggest area that has storage available, so everything kind of just drops there, which is a challenge in every project. We have to get excess material out, get the additional manpower here. The weight room specifically, the floor in there takes a little bit longer. There's a little more prep to it and a little bit longer to install that rubberized floor. So we're working through a couple of jobs, just clearing that space out in order to start that. Those are probably the biggest things. If we turn conditioning on Monday, right, cooling on Monday, say Tuesday, I feel we're in a good spot. Our wood doors are complete. We delivered all of our wood doors yesterday. We've got them in rooms with dehumidifiers going to keep those spaces controlled for the time being, but they're on the floors they need to go in so that when we flip the switch on the air conditioning, we can start spreading on us. And that's really what this week is about with the new crew that we have, is prepping and dispersing material to the area so that it's easier to put a crew on and say, do the third floor, do all the wood, do the doors, do the photo accessories, the mirrors, those types of things. I think that's just it. We have a lot of carpentry work to do, and then we have to get those inspections done.
Does, you know, you mentioned there were other jobs, right, that's taking a lot of the labor, and
Yeah.
there's a summer rush for education, construction. That's behind us, or local projects that are completed.
Yes. Yeah, so schools wise, there's a lot of summer renovations that have wrapped up around in this area, right? The other big jobs I mentioned aren't necessarily wrapping up or coming to a close, so we're not depending or counting on labor for those. We Gilbane have 3-4 jobs that just wrapped up with our carpentry contractor particularly, so I know 16 guys that are available coming off of those jobs between the end of this week and next, and we're looking to grab all of them and bring them here. And then some. So it takes roughly 3 to 4 hours per door to hang it, install the door hardware. Jake said we have 240 roughly. So it's gonna take a big crew to move through, but if they get the process set up, if they get them to where they're in location, it goes faster. So that's really the focus is on seeing that next, and then just working our way through what I call pre-punch, right? Like picking off the big items. We've already done our above ceiling punch list items. Things that aren't insulated, fire stopping that's not done of penetrations. We're working through the last of those as we also drop ceiling tiles. I don't think it was in the pictures, but the third floor, all the ceiling tile are, let's say 90% in, they're starting on the second floor as well. So that really starts to bring the space together quickly when you put the ceilings in, and then also starting flooring with humidity control and air conditioning next week will help to start finishing off those spaces as well.
I'm just curious about, assuming that we meet these targets and, when will Scoville be cleared of the partitions and be unimpeded, the primary?
Yeah. Good question. We are working on the alley side between the school and the parking garage right now. We intend for our first concrete pour on Tuesday for about half of the alley. And then probably 2 days behind that to make it out to Scoville. We've also excavated for the main entrance and the accessible ramp at the new entry. We're expecting our concrete crew here on Monday to start the foundations for that ramp. And then from there, we can work our sidewalks and our street rework out from there. So we've already done some of the prep excavating. We intend to start a lot of that site next week as we work the alley side. We can also work the Scoville side. Our plan will be to work curbs and sidewalks, brick pavers for the landscape areas. We'll work a lot of that stuff before we actually open it all up and take down the barriers in Scoville. And then we have to mill and honestly we have to do some further repairs to Scoville. It's taken some abuse with all the construction and the water over the past 2 years. So we've already been in some communication with the village about what's needed with that to put that back in the right condition. But yeah, within the next couple of weeks here, you'll see some Scoville start to take shape.
Any questions? Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Was with you for a while. So we're going to now go back to our first agenda item under finance, and that's the appointment of the authorized agent for the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. So I'll talk about something.
Sure. Very procedural here. Our prior IMRF authorized agent was our payroll and accounting coordinator. She has taken a position at a new district. And what we are doing is going to be appointing Brian Hoff as our authorized agent for IMRF. That requires board approval though.
That'll come.
That'll follow in the special.
Oh, on the special.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that one, because it's, just confirm that I believe we have that one in the special. Oh, no, I apologize. That's in 2 weeks, correct?
Okay, whistle.
Yeah.
No problem. And then I know going to the next several items I have you talked about, but they're for various purchases, starting with the new line sways, the item B.
Yes, and actually I can do the next 3 items together. When I came in, we talked about, just district, past practice, years ago was, and it's not an incorrect practice, but, as you approve a budget, that is the approval then to spend the money that's been put into that budget. For transparency's sake, if we make these large purchases, we bring them forward to the Board of Education. We're bringing 3 purchases to the board to be approved in 2 weeks. All on the technology side. We have a large subset of our smart boards that have become outdated. They don't sync up with the newer devices, and it makes teaching difficult. So we that's what the new line, purchase is for the wall mounts, and then there's some rooms that the, you can't put it necessarily on the wall, it has to be on a cart. So looking to update our technology in the classroom, for our students. The next two purchases are, planned, lab refreshes. One for, our, gaming lab, and then the other for, our.
Any questions, regarding on those proposals? Ellie?
So just clarifying, I think I heard you say these are all within the budget. So
Yes,
these are all
yeah, all-
budgeted plan.
All planned purchases, and then just, and I'll remind the board of this, yearly. Technology has different rules than say construction, so if you're looking at this and saying, why don't we have to necessarily go out to bid for $90,000 worth of, boards and screens for our classrooms? Technology does not have a bidding requirement, but what we do is go out and get multiple quotes and then talk to multiple vendors if there's a specific product that we're looking for, and then bring the best one forward, to the Board of Education.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, so these displays, how old are the ones that are being replaced for the most part? Do you have any idea?
They're approximately 7 to 10 years old.
I think I recall, Eric, that these were some of our base supported any longer. Do I recall the memos?
That's correct, and they will not work with some of the equipment.
So how many quotes did you get for this?
Which purchase are we talking about? Sorry.
Let's start with the new line displays, the wall mounts.
So, and Eric, if you have the exact number, let me know. What we did is, we talked to multiple companies about, a myriad of different products that would suit our needs. We looked at, more expensive smart boards, different types of projectors, to get to this total. Eric, I don't have the exact number with me, of the different products that we looked at.
Oh. Joe Tag, we worked on this and we were talking with Smartboard because it seemed like a logical choice to go back with the company we've been using for the last 7 to 10 years. What we weren't expecting was that those boards were going to cost almost 2.5 to almost 3 times, depending on which model you selected. Smartboard carries a massive premium, and we found these boards and other schools using them, and the prices were quite competitive. And so we opted to go with, after testing it in actually a couple of classrooms, that the New Wave was the way to go.
So, but. As I see in the memo, they said that, we've worked with Forte, formerly ABI Systems, for years now. But as far as, once you settle in on a product, we look to different sources for that product.
The prices that we get for education pricing, it doesn't really differentiate between vendors. Once you give that vendor the actual, you work with the vendor, as we do with Hewlett Packard and sometimes Cisco, they give that company the pricing for that deal. And so going to another company 9 times out of 10 will not yield, and particularly in this case, we're not yielding any different pricing. We get the bottom line pricing based on our commitment to the company that we select to use.
Yeah, it varies a little bit when we think about, I think the best way I can make a comparison for it, try to make it a little bit more clear. If you think about like when we just go out for proposals for our auditing service, we go out to companies and say, we need a service, what is your best price? Here, we are provided, whether it's CDW, Hewlett Packard, multiple companies, we're able to log in and see the best pricing for those machines, the quantities available, and kind of do a comparison real time across the board. But because they try to be very competitive in the education space, that pricing won't, oftentimes it's the exact same pricing that they go almost similar to like a co-op style. But it will not vary much between the preferred vendors that we use.
So I heard you say, typically for these types of services, we go out and we receive multiple quotes instead of this.
Yeah, I apologize for the misstatement. We compare the lists against each other to make sure that we're purchasing from the correct vendor for the pricing.
Okay, so, this was Forte's is supplying it, and we looked at CDW, we looked at whoever else, to see who was the most competitive. I mean, I know electronics have seen inflations here, so, what is the estimated lifespan of these machines, these displays?
Typical refresh for these is about 7 to 8 years.
And is there any commitment, sometimes you'll see manufacturers give a commitment for like updates and support for a period of time. Is that, could they stop updating these 2 years?
I guess anything is possible, but typically the larger players like this company and Smartboard, they usually support these for a good solid 5 to 6 years. And then there may be security patches that are available, kind of like what HP does and other vendors, and it eventually becomes an end of support and an end of life.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the technology purchases? So we will move to items E and F, the approval of the resolution authorizing placement of a tentative budget for inspection and notice of public hearing, as well as the tentative budget for 2026-27.
Sure, and I will turn it over to Brian for the budget presentation. Just to walk through the timeline here, we will discuss everything today. The tentative budget then will be voted on at the regular Board of Education meeting. The next day, the notice of public hearing goes out. That gives us the needed 30 days, it's a little over 30 days in this case, to notify the public that the tentative budget is on public display, with then a formal approval coming at the regular meeting in September.
For the notice, I saw in the previous that we would in the Tribune on the 21st of August, the day after the board meeting, but I saw this journal for earlier days, that shifting.
It is shifting. We procedurally, it did not work out how we initially had intended, and there is not enough days. We don't meet that 30-day requirement if we go on the next available Wednesday Journal one, so we'll use the Tribune this year.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. Any questions about the notice before we move to the budget discussion, like presentation? Guess we're turning over to Brian.
Yeah, thank you guys. So with this being the first time that most board members will be seeing the fiscal year 27 budget, tonight's presentation will focus mainly on the major revenue and expense categories that make up the budget, some changes we're experiencing within those categories, and how the budget impacts the district's long-term financial position. So the reason we have a tentative budget, Tony kind of alluded to this, is there's an Illinois school requirement that we must make the budget available to the public for at least 30 days prior to adoption. It's referred to as a tentative budget because we can and most likely will continue to make changes even between now and the final adoption in September. But this will be the official budget that gets put on display for public viewing for that mandated 30-day period. When it comes to compiling the budget, District 200 uses a zero-based budgeting methodology for our expenses. And what that means is each year when we start the budget, we started at 0 and we gradually build it up with a rationale being provided for all of the dollars that are being requested. That philosophy holds true for all types of expenses, whether we're talking about the salary and benefits for a particular staff position, a construction project or a request from a division budget manager for some kind of services or materials. The benefit of taking an approach like that is alternative budgeting methods. You kind of have this susceptible nature of, this is what we budgeted last year. I'm going to ask for the same thing or more next year just so I can make sure I have what I need. This philosophy focuses more on justifying what those dollars are going to be for. In some cases, department budgets go up. In some cases, they go down depending on what their needs are. So this has been an effective way for us to kind of keep tabs and control on expenditures and plan for kind of that ebb and flow of expenses in future years as well. On the revenue side, the tax levy is really the major component of the budget. That is a known quantity because that levy was adopted last December. But then we have other sources of revenue that do involve estimates, usually based on things like student enrollment, economic conditions, or in some cases, grant awards from the state and federal government. So then as we turn our attention to the finances, the revenue budget, as I said, is composed largely of property taxes. And if we go back to last year's tax levy, the 2025 levy was unique because it included this additional $700,000 of recaptured revenue that had not been claimed in previous years when the district was in possession of a larger fund balance. When we factor that recapture in, the total levy increase came to 4.4% over the previous year's levy. Now, ordinarily, when we're looking at tax revenues on a fiscal year basis, that percentage winds up being a little bit higher than what the levy was actually approved for because we see a greater share of the levy arrive in the fall installment at the start of our fiscal year. But then, complicating matters a little bit further this year, we have Cook County's ongoing technology issues that have essentially prevented us from receiving all of the taxes we would have normally gotten by June 30th of the fiscal year that just ended. So this year's budget is making the assumption that they will catch up on those payments in the coming year now that they're starting to turn the corner a little bit on some of these technology issues. And our annual increase for tax revenues on a fiscal year basis will actually be closer to 9%. When you see that percentage in the revenue summary of the budget, just keep in mind that 9% obviously does not reflect the levy increase that we approved, but rather it is a consequence of that delay in the payment issues that are coming from on the county side. Then the second type of revenues included are the second type of tax revenues that are included in the budget are called corporate personal property replacement taxes. These revenues have kind of been a focal point in past budget years because of the volatility we've experienced. And you can kind of see that in the chart here. Revenues were unusually high during the tail end of the pandemic, but then they've fallen back down to pretty much what we were seeing prior to the pandemic. And now they seem to be leveling off for us somewhere in that $2 million range per year, maybe a little less than that. We're still awaiting for the Department of Revenue to release their annual revenue estimate. But for now, our budget is assuming a 5% drop in the CPPRT revenue next year. Once that estimate comes out, we'll take a look at that and adjust the budget accordingly. Typically, what we see in actual revenues has been coming in, somewhere within 5 to 10% of what the Department of Revenue provides as an estimate. In other local revenues, we're projecting a 60% decline in interest income this year. So that will stand out if you're comparing budget totals from year to year. And that's despite the fact that rates are currently expected to remain rather favorable, in at least in the short term. Quite simply, the district now has less cash available to invest. In this chart on this slide, you'll see that we're starting the year with about half as much money in the bank as the year before, because we committed over $40 million of fund balance to capital projects in fiscal year 26. So that lower cash balance means our investment opportunities are essentially limited to the times when property taxes arrive in bulk for us. So, then kind of turning this back to the situation with Cook County, they've already announced that the tax bills this fall will be delayed at least 2 months. So that requires us to then keep more cash on hand to weather those delays. And that liquidity also means the budget for interest income carries a bit more risk this year than it has in years past, as we're more susceptible to any potential changes in interest rates. One other local revenue item of note, we are anticipating a little bit of growth in food service revenue that stems from price increases in our contract with District 97, as well as a 25-cent increase in the daily lunch price that will be going into effect for District 200 students. And those are, mainly to help offset rising food costs. In state revenues, the main storyline of the budget this year is this $3.5 million grant that was secured for us by the Imagine Foundation as part of their fundraising for Project 2. This grant has been an interesting one, to say the least, because we first found out about it 2 years ago. So you may remember that this has been included in our budget in each of the last 2 years in some fashion, because the assumption was we'd be receiving portions of that grant as Project 2 construction progressed. However, it's taken the state a considerable amount of time to first make the funds available to us and then go through the various stages of reviewing our grant application. Fortunately, the grant agreement was finally approved back in May. So we're now officially in this stage of being able to start reporting and claiming for expenses as of the end of this month. So we do have a much higher confidence level that this grant revenue will actually be recognized in the coming year. And with Project 2, nearing completion now, we will likely see almost all of it, if not all, within fiscal year 27. Then we have a similar situation that may be on the horizon with federal revenues. One of the benefits of the geothermal project was its eligibility for tax incentives under the Inflation Reduction Act. Initial estimates that were provided to us by Verigy indicated that the incentive could be over $8 million. So as you might expect, there are a number of compliance reviews that have to occur before we can actually obtain that incentive. So there's some uncertainty associated both with the exact amount and then the timing of when the district will receive those funds. For now, May or June is kind of what we're hearing to be the most likely scenario. But it is with how late in the fiscal year it is, that is possible that revenue could be delayed beyond this year, depending on things like when the tax return can be filed, and then how quickly the IRS processes the payment to us. So this is definitely a key item that we're going to be monitoring throughout the year from a cash flow perspective, well after the budget is actually adopted. Then on slide 7, we have a yearly comparison here for each of our major sources of revenue. On the left side, total revenue budgeted for fiscal year 27 is $122 million. Then over on the right, the blue box indicates that this would be a 16% increase from the previous year's actual revenue. Now, again, the majority of that increase can be explained by those one-time revenues that I was just talking about from the Project 2 state grant and the geothermal federal tax incentives. So that is kind of distorting that percentage increase in this particular budget year. But if we were to exclude those from our budget, the overall budget increase from a revenue standpoint would be a more modest 4.3%. So that brings me to the end of the revenue section. Before I continue, I just wanted to check in and see if there are any questions so far.
Yeah, so, if the budget is approved as is, what would be the corresponding levy increase that would be requested to accommodate that?
So the
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so the current assumption that is built into the budget right now, we're not looking at future levies at this point. So we've got the 2025 tax levy money that will be coming to us over the course of calendar year 2026. And then in the spring, because the levy for 2026 is still just recently approved, the county gives us an estimate just using a percentage of the prior year's levy. So anything in this year's budget does not take into account any types of assumptions for the levy the board will approve in this upcoming December.
So this is strictly given prior approvals. There's no increase.
Correct. You the way it works is when we levy, we're levying for the next fiscal year. So we'll essentially in December, when we go through our levy process, that'll be not for the fiscal year that we're in, but for the one to follow.
Okay. And then the some of the assumptions in here, because we're getting like the health insurance, which just is close to home. Is the estimate was like 8%, which just given the climate today with healthcare, like, it seems rather low. I was curious as to the source of that. If we have seen.
Yeah. We've had our preliminary year-to-date meetings with our broker, and we are actually trending slightly better than that 8%. So then as we project out, kind of through the end of the year, we actually feel really comfortable with this 8% number. Some of the changes that were implemented last year have had the positive impact that we had been hoping for, and we're trending in a really good direction there.
Thank you.
Brian, I'm not seeing any other questions right now.
Okay. So then moving over to the expenditure side of the budget, employee salaries and benefits make up about 60% of the school district's overall expense budget. The salaries are currently projected to increase 4% in total. And that number is at this point inclusive of the new faculty senate contract that was ratified over the summer, as well as the 2 interventionist positions that were approved by the board last month. So we are at this point pretty set on the salary number, other than whatever kind of staffing changes happen between now and the early part of the school year. There is a reconciliation that occurs after we run our first payroll for all of the district staff members. That's actually coming up in about 2 weeks' time. So once we get through that payroll, we'll check that against our budget just to make sure we've captured all of the turnover properly and make any adjustments there as necessary. And then we'll be solid from a salary standpoint when the budget comes back in September. The budget for employee benefits, we just touched on this a minute ago, but we're continued to be impacted most by the rise in health insurance costs, with premiums being set on a calendar year basis, our budget reflects 6 months of known expenses, but then we use that 8% assumption for the increase that will go into effect on January 1. And again, that assumption comes from what we've been using in our financial projections, as well as some of the early conversations we've had with our insurance consultants. The difficult thing with the health insurance, and this is not just this year, but every year, is the district's claims tend to run higher in the summer months when, teachers and the majority of our staff are off and, have more procedures and other things like that are occurring. So without having that claims experience available to us for another month or two here, there's definitely some estimates involved at this point of the year. We're hoping, we'll have a clearer picture of what that renewal is going to look like, once that data becomes available to us in, roughly a month or so. Then expenses outside of personnel, these tend to fluctuate more on a yearly basis, depending on specific department needs. So rather than focusing on variances within those categories, the bottom half of the slide instead highlights some of the new spending initiatives we have in fiscal year 27. So in purchase services, the budget includes costs for a student information system conversion, which was approved by the board, I think a couple months ago now. We also have some advertising and communications costs in the event that the district pursues a referendum in the spring. So I know that hasn't been decided yet, but if the board chooses to go that route, we wanted to make sure that there's adequate funding in the budget that we can, tackle that appropriately. And then finally, there are some preventative maintenance programs costs for some of the safety equipment in the building, such as our AEDs and security cameras. All of these things are new to the fiscal year 27 budget in some capacity. Then in supplies and materials, we have upcoming the replacement of marching band uniforms. Those had last been purchased 14 years ago, I believe. So they were long overdue, I would say, compared to like the normal useful life of uniforms. And again, that purchase has also been approved by the board at this point. And then lastly, there are several equipment purchases planned. Some of them came to the board tonight between some of the classroom technology you heard about, and then also furniture and equipment related to our new Project 2 spaces once those are up and available for us. Then one area where we continue to see some growth is special education outplacement costs. And this was a topic of conversation in last year's budget as well. These expenses come in the form of tuition and transportation. In the chart on this slide, you can see the cost increases we've experienced over the last 2 years. Although not as high as last year, our projected increases for fiscal year 27 are still quite substantial. We're looking at roughly 12% for tuition, 45% for room and board, 8% for transportation, all for a combined increase to the budget in those areas of over $1 million. The challenge here is that we have very little control over these costs because these students require services that the district is unable to provide in-house. So, they're placed in a setting that is most appropriate for them to obtain that, free and appropriate education. Tuition rates with private schools are also non-negotiable. Those are rates that are set by the State Board of Education. So sometimes all it takes from a budgetary standpoint is the addition of 1 or 2 students with severe needs to completely change the financial picture of the special education budget. However, when the increases outpace the assumptions within our financial projections, as they do here, it does put strain on other areas of the budget where we kind of have to find ways to offset those increases. And that is not, to say that that is the rest of the district incurring or, having to reduce their budget at the expense of special ed department. One way the special ed department has attempted to offset these costs themselves is through aggressive contract negotiations with some of the third-party vendors who provide support services to students in our building. All of those contracts come to the board on an annual basis for approval. And, for the coming year, they were renewed in June with almost all of them were at no rate increase whatsoever for next year. I think there was one with a minimal rate increase. But that allowed the budget to remain flat in those areas. And, while it can't make up $1 million in the budget, it certainly helps to kind of balance out the budget across other divisions as well. The other thing to remember here is
Brian, we've got a question really quick.
Sorry,
Sure.
I think many of the students that we're talking about require the placement. Much of the need is probably known or aware of before they reach ninth grade. Is that a fair assumption? As part of our information sharing with D97 and D90, do we know in advance to budget, right? Because you mentioned one or two. You're right, the tuition rewards is significant. That does provide a decent amount of volatility. Are we able to plan appropriately?
We made, and Andrea Newman has a lot of these conversations, and I know she's extremely proactive with District 90 and District 97, where some changes still can occur is the students are reevaluated in 8th grade before they come to high school. If the needs become more profound and they go, say, from an in-district setting to outplacement, that can be a last minute change, as well as students that move into the district from another district. If a family, purchases a home in Oak Park, we wouldn't know about them until registration. And I'd like to, and Brian did a really nice job of it, but I just want to echo it again. Andrea Newman's done a really good job of controlling every cost this year that she can control. She's a great advocate for our students in the special education program, but she's been a great partner with the business office as well as we, try to get our heads around the costs as we build a budget.
I have a quick question. When we look at these, the increase in these costs over the years, at what point in time do we actually say to ourselves, should we be looking at what the feasibility of providing these services ourselves? Because when you're talking about, say you've got a little over 4 million plus this one, 1.5, so it's $5.5 million and another $2.5 million. It's a lot of money. And so my question is, at what point in time, based on a number of students, do we look at, hey, would it be feasible for us to take some or all of these services and actually provide them within the district?
It's an excellent question. I don't have an incredibly concrete answer for you. It's an efficiencies and scales question, but it complicates it. What I mean is the services, if all the services that we are providing, majority of the services that these other institutions are providing fall within a very kind of similar range, similar category. Okay, that would be make it more likely that provided in our own type of facility would be beneficial for us. That's not often the case. Often, what is specifically stated in IEP, requested by families and discussed throughout this process are a wide array of facilities, around the state and outside of the state. And so having our own doesn't would necessarily, right, solve the issue itself. And so the risk that would have to be evaluated in that conversation is, would try to have our own type of facility and maintain that, do enough to keep folks in-house at a cheap enough cost compared to what we have here, while still having some students who need to be still educated outside the district. Does it make sense? So all of that has to be figured out.
I'm just asking, when these numbers,
They're wrong. There's no doubt about it.
you're approaching 10% of the budget.
That's right.
I think one other thing to note too, is, and this number will vary year to year, but the students that are generally outplaced, have such a profoundly, different set of needs, that it makes it, difficult to say we could insource it. I believe we have dozens of different, locations that, provide services to us. Many, not just on a learning standpoint, but medical need as well. That, not to say that it couldn't be done, but the complexity, if we had 4 students here and another 6 at another building and 3 with different needs at a third location, the likelihood that we could consolidate them all together into one space would be very difficult.
Yes, exactly.
Can I ask one more thing while we're on this topic, which is, what about reimbursement, federal or state reimbursement of the special ed costs in general, and then the outplacement costs specifically? Is there any percentage or amount of that that's reimbursed?
There is, there is a room and board, a federal room and board grant under IDEA that we do receive money from. There are also some state special education grants. While the federal one has stayed fairly consistent, we tend to get about 80% of the room and board expenses back in reimbursements in the following year. The ones from the state have been less predictable. What we've seen in recent years is the state can't budget enough to meet the costs that districts are incurring. So whatever their appropriated amount is for that grant, the percentage of costs that we're getting reimbursed seems to be shrinking each year just because the money is not available at the state level.
That would also hold true, for the transportation side of that. Transportation for special education programs does, become part of our transportation claim that is filed, each year. However, there's talks of that being prorated as well as these costs continue to soar, not necessarily for our district, but across the state.
Thank you.
Brian, I think we're good to continue.
All right. So then if we look at our operating funds as a whole, so this would be excluding construction and debt service expenses. The fiscal year 27 budget projects about $98 million of expenses, and that would be about a 6% increase from the prior year's actual expenditures. And while that percentage may sound high, I do want to point out that the budget from any type of governmental unit is really a not to exceed amount rather than a true predictor of exactly how much we will spend. So there is some conservatism that is factored in from that standpoint. And, just to illustrate, you can look at the fiscal year 26 results as an example, but our actual spending over the last few years has typically come in about 2 to 4% below budget each year. So, in terms of dollars, we're talking, roughly $2 million a year of the budget has not been spent on an annual basis. So, if we can hold that trend, then we'd be looking at something closer to a 4% increase in those actual operating expenses by the end of the year. Then this next slide switches gears and outlines the budget for those construction and debt service expenses, as well as how we expect to fund them next year. The lion's share of construction expenses will again go towards Project 2 as that project starts to reach substantial completion. Then on the other side of the spectrum, we have Act 3, which is still in the design phase. So there is some contingency that has again been built into the budget for Act 3. And the reason being, if hypothetically the board decided to go to referendum in the spring and that referendum was successful, funding would need to be available for FGM to begin preparing construction documents beginning in April. So those last couple months of fiscal year 27, we would be incurring some of those expenses for Act 3. So the Act 3 budget line here includes $930,000 of work that has not officially been approved by the board yet to accommodate that work if needed. Again, that money would not be touched unless the board actually decided to move ahead with the referendum and the referendum was successful. But we did want to include that in the budget just so we have the funding available if needed.
Yeah, just a quick note on that, and Brian, I'll turn it right back to you. But just so the board knows, this is, as we did this is not a presumption that the board will say go forward, but we have to budget for this right now in the case that it does, or else if the board did choose to go forward, we wouldn't have the money available within our budget.
Yeah, and then in terms of paying for the expenses on this slide, that's what the bottom funding sources information alludes to. We have about $12 million remaining in the capital projects fund at this point. So those funds will be used first to pay for construction expenses. Then an additional $15 million will need to be transferred from the operating funds, and $5 million then would be expected to come from external funding sources, such as the donations from the Imagine Foundation for Project 2, as well as that $3.5 million state grant that we saw on the revenue side. All right, so then next we'll look at the budget's impact on fund balance. And on this slide, our total operating funds, which are shown at the top, and as we move kind of from left to right, we're expected to start the year at around $32 million. Our revenues are budgeted to exceed expenditures by $16 million. But then we have transfers of $15 million, which are highlighted in blue. And those are needed for the non-operating funds in the lower half of the slide. So $12 million of that money is going towards capital projects, and the remaining $3 million to cover our debt service payments. Then back up on the top, highlighted in green, we project that we will have an operating fund balance at the end of fiscal year 27 of roughly $33 million. And that would equate to 34% of our annual operating expenditures. Just as a reminder here, our fund balance policy targets 25 to 50%. So the fiscal year 27 budget is keeping us both within our policy range and actually in a very similar place to where we finished the most recent fiscal year. Even with the budget nearing completion here in the next month or so, there are always going to be a few areas of uncertainty that could affect the district's financial position by the end of the year. I've touched on most of these already, so I mainly want to focus here on the tax incentive from the geothermal project. And that's due to the amount of revenue we're talking about, as well as that possibility of, the revenue being delayed beyond this upcoming fiscal year. If we were to remove that tax and incentive revenue from this budget, the district's fund balance percentage for the budget would fall to just under 25% by June 30th. Now, as I mentioned before, the chances of us spending the full amount of the budget are pretty slim, but even if we didn't fall below the lower boundary of the fund balance policy, we would still be below that 33% fund balance that we've kind of been targeting lately. So that obviously leaves less wiggle room for navigating things such as Cook County property tax delays. The business office is regularly monitoring cash flow, so we will absolutely have contingency plans in place for these types of situations. But since we're still kind of in the very early stages of what may shake out with this federal tax incentive money, I did want the board to be fully aware of how our fiscal outlook changes if either the timing or the amount of this tax incentive deviates at all from the current expectation.
We're presuming that the tax incentive will come in one lump sum.
Yes, that's our understanding.
And is it possible, will you be aware of perhaps other applications or requests for that incentive? I presume it would come to everyone at the same time. It's not going to be like a step and like a grant. Is that also? Because I want to understand better kind of like this.
Yeah, I will be honest, I would need to research that. I am not certain if it comes through, if they release all funds to all applicants at one time, or if it's staggered out. I can research that, but I don't know the answer off the top of my head.
And is there a variability in kind of how much that we are planning to eligible for the incentive? Are we confident?
That we're extremely confident with. We are have been through the application process in pretty constant contact both with Verigy and Gilbane to make sure that we're claiming everything that is eligible. And we feel really strongly about the number that we are projecting. It's just the timing we don't feel, we feel, the best way I can say it is we feel okay about it, but, being a big federal reimbursement and given the time frame that we anticipate we'd receive it, it is possible that we'd have a timing delay that could push us down to, this 25% range on June 30th, and then, could be July 31st back to the 33% if it came in July.
All right, so then the last kind of topic of the presentation is we have an update of the 5-year financial projection. This first slide, which is referred to as the base scenario, shows the impact on the operating funds if revenues and expenses from the fiscal year 27 budget are carried forward using our standard set of assumptions. So from a revenue standpoint, that does include the assumption that the district continues to recapture the remaining unclaimed levy dollars over the next 2 years. When last year's levy was approved, the scenario that it fell under was that the recapture would come over would essentially be split up over 3 different years as needed. So this financial projection does assume that the recapture is claimed in each of the next 2 levy years. It also assumes that expenses are permitted to grow uninhibited according to current trends. And the district also continues its existing practice of paying for building maintenance work from fund balance reserves. The results of this scenario, which are highlighted in green at the bottom, show that fund balance would drop about 3 or 4 percentage points every year. Similar to the approach taken last year, I'm also presenting a scenario that shows what adjustments might be needed if we chose to target the 33% fund balance to expense ratio. Now, I know the question has come up before, why 33%? The reason is it gives us more of a safety net in the event of Cook County delaying property taxes. The 33% number gives us enough money in the bank at the start of the year to cover 4 months worth of expenses, which means that we could likely navigate a 2 or maybe 2.5 month delay in taxes before we would be looking at the possibility of having to borrow money to pay our bills. So in this projection scenario, the row highlighted in orange identifies the amount of budget adjustments needed in the future to maintain that 33% fund balance. Currently, we're projecting about 2 to 2.5 million of adjustments would be required in the next 2 years, but then that amount climbs to 5 million in the following 2 years. So what might these adjustments look like? The arrows on the right point out 2 different possibilities. The first option in the blue arrow is simply to reduce spending. One thing working in the district's favor is that actual expenses have come in under budget, $1 to $2 million in each of the last 3 years. So if we can continue that trend, most of those short-term target amounts may be covered without making any type of drastic budget cuts. The longer term view likely requires some additional measures. So if it's not, further reductions of spending, it could be doing some type of financing for 10-year maintenance plan expenses rather than paying for that work with operating funds on an annual basis. You can see next to this red arrow that the projection calls for about $4 million worth of transfers per year from the operating funds in order to meet those upcoming capital improvement needs. If we didn't have to make those transfers, the fund balance could remain stable with much less disruption to operational spending. But then the offset obviously would be increases in the tax levy to support that financing plan. So to sort of wrap things up here, the fiscal year 27 budget combined with our actual results from fiscal year 26 do have us in a slightly better position than where we were projecting at this time last year. However, these projections continue to show we certainly have more work to do as expected. We knew going into this year's budget planning that it would require ongoing efforts to control spending. So we plan to continue with that mindset moving forward. And obviously we will also keep working with both the board and the Community Finance Committee with some of the plans for how this projection will sort of evolve and future budget years will be crafted in the upcoming years. So with that, I will turn it back over if there are additional questions or comments.
And I know we've been discussing with you, Brian, throughout. Let's see if there are any other, right?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions and a few comments. In your budgeted expenditures, you've got salaries increase to 4%. And my question is, you said I guess your base set on what we've got, but does that include any positions that are not filled right now, that are not that have not been filled, or is this budgeting at full capacity?
It does have a placeholder for any position that is not currently filled. But one thing that we do is based on kind of how expenses have turned out in previous years, we build in what I refer to essentially as a vacancy adjustment. So, you know, if we get to the end of the year and we tend to find that 95% of our food service salaries actually get spent because we had open positions throughout the year, or turnover that we're kind of lowering the expense amount. I factor those assumptions into the budget going forward and assume that we're not going to be at full capacity, if that makes sense.
But at this point in time, this is budgeted at full capacity.
No, it does have those vacancy
Okay. It does.
assumptions in there.
Okay. Then the other question I have, is when we look at the, I'm looking at the slide, I think it was the budgeted expenditures operating funds. You got the $5.6 million circled, and you're saying, well, it's really not gonna be 5.6 because we're running at a roughly $2 million ahead of that on an annual basis. I guess if we have that $2 million moving from year to year to year, that we're not a for-profit organization. I really think that should be considered, that we ought to be looking at what makes up those numbers within the budget, adjust it so that our budget would be more correct, more accurate, so that we have a real need, we have a better knowledge of what we need for our tax levy in the fall. Because I think it's unfair to taxpayers to continually budget for $2 million a year more than we're actually going to spend.
One thing, because I don't disagree with what you're saying on when it comes to that number, some of that comes into the vacancy scenarios that Brian has put forward, but really what that number tends to come to is about 1.5% to 2% of a budget contingency. We have seen historically, like the last few years, we've done a pretty good job of controlling costs throughout the year, but it's not uncommon as well to see that swing in a different direction. We in some scenarios could see 4 to 5 additional students move into the district for a special education program, let's say, and it swings it that way. So it's it isn't so much about banking money as much as kind of a need for that 1 to 1.5% to 2% budget contingency.
And the last, finally, and another one that goes to our expenditures is, and I brought this up on a couple of occasions, and that is our estimate of enrollment over the next, and I want to say off my top of my head, 5 years, is that we're going to be reducing our enrollment by about 150 students, which is what, 5% of our 25% enrollment. And is our projected enrollment factored into this budget numbers?
So from a budget standpoint, we are, that's obviously just a 1-year outlook. So we've got a pretty good sense as to what our enrollment is going to look like in the coming school year. When we then talk about the 5-year financial projections, there are assumptions built into there on enrollment. And as those enrollment changes occur, we have made adjustments to some of the spending for, I guess you could call them like the tangible items of the budget, you know, like the amount of supplies we have to buy, the number of computers we have to have available, things of that nature. Where we have not really made assumptions for changes would be in staffing per se, because if we were to be projecting an increase in enrollment, then we would definitely have in there the anticipation of increased costs from a staffing standpoint. But when the enrollment is projected to decline, our stance has been to be more conservative and assume that staffing will hold flat in the event that, one, we either don't get that actual decrease in enrollment, or two, you know, sometimes there are staffing needs that are not necessarily contingent on enrollment, but rather certain student needs to where, you know, you could still have a flat number of staff regardless of what happens with enrollment.
Yeah, a big reason for that, and hopefully this will make sense. You know, if let's say you projected 30 student decline from one year to the next, if you were to unit school district, that has a greater impact, say, on an elementary or middle school, that number, because you're talking about one cohort or classroom of students that essentially have gone away. So you don't need that one FTE. In a high school, it gets a little bit more difficult because that 30 students can spread out over such a wider variety of classes that they take, that you may see enrollment in a class drop from 18 to 16 in a particular class, but it doesn't necessarily mean you can reduce a full FTE at that point. So generally, we see that readjustment come in the staffing recommendations that come forward on an annual basis.
One last comment on enrollment too is, you know, as we're kind of projecting out to the future on enrollment, we're driving those numbers mainly on the enrollments we're seeing in our feeder districts. At one time, the last set of projections that were done by an outside party were projecting some of those larger declines in enrollment that you mentioned, Fred. Since that time, we've actually seen that the decrease is shrinking. So it's now looking more like, you know, maybe we'll have a decrease of roughly 75 to 80 students in the next couple of years, but then it's starting to show a leveling out, or even just a very slight increase when we get to like years 4 and 5 from now.
And actually, I'll follow that up with one more last final comment on enrollment. I don't know that this will come to fruition, but we have reached out to our 2 feeder districts to see if there would be an appetite for kind of a tri-district demographer study that would look at both the elementary and the high school together, so that we can really be working on the same set of assumptions. Because if, you know, a demographer does District 97, a different company with a slightly different methodology does River Forest, and then you know, if we hired somebody with then a slightly different methodology there, we could see, you know, variances you know, between the numbers, where if we get a consistent one that looks at our growth holistically together, there may be some benefit to that. Obviously, both districts have new superintendents, so their finance departments, you know, are presenting it. We'll see if there's an appetite for it going forward, but it's certainly something we've started the talks on.
Have we seen in previous years the amount of out of district, you know, new students coming, moving into 200 from non-feeder schools? We've seen that number grow. Is it running flat?
I can look into that. I don't think we've seen it grow demonstrably or, you know, in a dramatic way, but we do have a way to track that. I can take a look at that more specifically.
Because one thing is, to, you know, to Tony and Fred's points, if it hasn't changed, if it hasn't come to fruition that we aren't seeing that same level of decline, where's it coming from? It's, you know, earthly aren't going up, so let's go get it.
Yeah, I'd have to look into that too. Yeah, it's, it can be a little bit more predictable, just because, Oak Park is, very landlocked, so, it can be as simple as, a standard, the study gets done, we have a projection number, but more families come in and move into the district, sixth, seventh grade, and then feed in that way. We don't have the growth of some of the areas out west that are seeing a lot of brand new housing developments pop up that throw enrollment way out of whack. But yeah, certainly something we can look into.
Any other questions for Brian and Tony? Okay, and so next steps is that we will approve at the August 20th meeting, the resolution by notice. And then in September 24th is when we'll have the public hearing for the budget. And that will be all the adjustments at that time. Tony, any
Yes.
adjustments then?
Yep, so what'll happen between now and then, the Community Finance Committee will also review the tentative budget. And then there will be, the one thing I can assure you is these numbers will change slightly before the final budget. One of the biggest drivers comes from the true up in payroll numbers when we start to actually run the payrolls for the year. And then also we will see the CPPRT estimates come in between now and the final budget, most likely. Those will be the two of the biggest drivers, barring any other new information we receive.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
And then our final agenda item is around policy. We did already discuss the data sharing agreement for early childhood collaboration. We'll see that next meeting. And then put this under governance, but one of the things that we spoke about was the need to look at our committees as a board. And so we started this discussion last month. And what I'd like to just get perspective on is the best way to move forward with looking at the idea of our committees and where there may be opportunities for consolidation or repurposing. And we also know that the policy committee with Josh and Tim are also going to take a look at some of the policies that we just need to update to make sure that those are, that we have clarity. But I didn't, sorry, my microphone keeps going out. I don't want us to lose the momentum discussion about how do we look at committees. For now, we've agreed to keep our same committee assignments as we determine what might be the best structure going forward. So I'm just looking for discussion ideas for the best way for us to move this forward. Should we have us, a couple of folks look at it, or be kind of what's these thoughts?
I think especially when we look at some of the committees that are more community or activity based, that it might make some sense to somehow get some feedback from them, whether survey them or what it might be, to find out what their expectations are and what and ask them what their needs are. I mean,
yeah, because we talked about what might need to be a board liaison, right? So what
Right.
level of participation, et cetera, might be needed for it.
exactly. Because I think there's differing needs depending on what their purpose and mission.
Any other thoughts or ideas?
I like your suggestion, Audrey, maybe tasking two board members with taking this on as a project. I think that this might merit being one of the board's goals for the year. So it might just fall into that umbrella, but if not, if you want to do this more on an ad hoc basis, or you want to do this, on an expedited basis, maybe tasking two board members with sort of thinking this through, both in terms of process, thinking about it in terms of stakeholder involvement, thinking about it in terms of what the board's needs are, what the administration's needs are. I think that's probably the best way to move, it's a free fall discussion.
Yeah, I agree, and I hadn't thought about the part about the goal, Tim, I think he's something. Look at really put some time and energy behind, because I do think we need to give some thought to. Be thoughtful about this, and make sure we're engaging folks in that we are determining what's going to work well for the system with respect to the board, the administration, and then our community. So I like that. So do we have any volunteers for it? That's our next question.
Well, I think Graham.
Well, you know what, it's something I'm very happy to also be part of. I will ask Graham, and he's not here, so I will ask that question. And I may come back to you all, based on what he says, but I do think it's okay, so it's gonna take us a bit of time. And I just wanna make sure that we get it, that we keep the momentum going and keep it, and keep working on it. Board admin, no updates on that. I think one of the things we talked about earlier was having the, like interview groups, and that process correct that you use to determine. Or academic professor, something that we can actually add to, our board atlas is one of those updates.
Great.
Simple that. And then finally, are there any future agenda items?
I think I discussed this and we've kicked it around a little bit. I'd like to hear from Kristen Davitt and David Lorraine,
yes.
kind of how building security has been working out. We've seen a decrease in vape utilization right in the bathrooms with the doors and all that. I don't know when others are interested in that or when would be an appropriate time for something like that.
That is, I don't know exactly, but that is coming to the board early fall, I think September now.
Yeah, you're right, that is something Justin we had talked about. We're trying to get an update and just understanding what's happening, so. It's so great, you can confirm what the time will be for.
Yeah, I will. It's linked to a conversation we previously had about the emergency exercises that we did this last weekend. So let me just confirm. But it is.
Is there anything else? Anything else? I will move to adjourn. So I, Audrey Williams-Lee, moves to adjourn the committee of the whole meeting at 9:25 p.m. May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The meeting is adjourned. And don't forget, we have a special meeting. The committee of the whole meeting is adjourned, and we are going to move into our special meeting. And so I call to order the special board meeting at 9:26 p.m. in the boardroom of Oak Park English Forest High School. Please call the roll.
Mr. Grahams.
Here.
Mr. Gertz.
Here.
Dr. Livingston.
Here.
Dr. Odell. Here. Mr. Arkin.
Here.
Ms. Williams-Lee.
Here. And Ms. Evans, do you have any public comments?
No.
Then we will move to our action item, and I move to approve the following action items. Approval of the personnel recommendations, including new hires, assignment changes, resignations, releases, and leaves of absence. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Gertz.
Yes.
Dr. Livingston.
Yes.
Mr. Arkin.
Yes.
Dr. Odell.
Yes.
Mr. Grahams.
Yes.
And Ms. Williams-Lee.
Yes. And with that, I, Audrey Williams-Lee, move to adjourn the special meeting at 9:27 p.m. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, meeting adjourned.